He's not only a rock and roll star from the 80s. David Byrne has directed and scored films. He has written books about everything from trees to cycling, and he has founded both a record label and a non-profit organization. Each item on this bench represents an aspect of his current life. Byrne was the lead vocalist of Talking Heads, from their formation in the 1970s till their formal breakup in 1991, but his work branches far beyond the pioneering new wave band. His solo music career began with his collaboration with Brian Eno, resulting in the album My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. Since then, he has produced an impressive number of solo and collaborative albums, 10 to be exact. But his more recent projects involve cycling, radio, positive journalism, and a critically acclaimed concert film. When in New York, Byrne casts aside his car in favour of a more inspiring mode of transport: cycling. He published a book called Bicycle Diaries in 2009, which encapsulates his cycling experiences around the world. And he also has designed bike racks. The racks could be seen around New York and were later sold as art. His advocacy for cycling is increasingly relevant, since the world needs to adopt more sustainable modes of transport, but Byrne advocates that cycling is simply more pleasant than travelling by car.
I think because you're kind of gliding on wheels, it feels kind of dreamy, and there's a sense of kind of floating through the landscape and watching it as it goes by.
In a world that seems to grow darker each day, Byrne initiated a project that brings optimism to journalism, Reasons to be Cheerful, an editorial project which provides an alternative to the glum, dispiriting news we see in mainstream media. Their articles are about solutions to problems and good news in general. As well as being the founder, Byrne is an in-house headline writer. Reasons to be Cheerful is under the banner of Byrne's non-profit organisation, Arbutus. The aim of the Arbutus Foundation is to deliver projects that inspire and educate. As of now, their projects don't expand much beyond Reasons to be Cheerful, but they are working on an immersive theatre experience called Theatre of the Mind, which ambitiously aims to combine the work of scientists with immersive theatre. The show is a collaboration between Byrne and research analyst Mala Gaonkar. Byrne was inspired to create Theatre of the Mind due to his ongoing interest in neuroscience. The experience involves an actor leading 16 individuals through a series of rooms, and aims to challenge one's identity and perception of the world. Among Byrne's less world-changing, identity-grappling art projects is his internet radio show, simply called Radio David Byrne.
Hi, this is David Byrne, and you're listening to DB Radio.
Each radio show is a playlist of music connected by theme or genre. One show is released monthly. In 2020, a concert film for David Byrne's American Utopia was released, directed by Spike Lee.
Thank you. American Utopia is on Broadway at the St. James Theater. David Byrne and the cast of American Utopia, everybody. That's it for the late...
Byrne wrote the screenplay himself. In the film, between songs, Byrne talks about seemingly unrelated topics, everything from neuroscience to voting, to the way in which people meet. The musicians are all barefoot and dressed in grey. Byrne achieved a completely minimalist style, eliminating the stuff which nobody cares about. And, in the end, what really matters are the musicians and the audience. Set design and costumes are meaningless distractions. Through the grey, industrial theme, the musicians bring their own colour to the stage. The performance is a great example of Byrne's minimalist approach to life. He prefers bicycles instead of cars. He focuses on good news about solutions, rather than dreary news about problems, and highlights the importance of people through American Utopia. We often associate charisma with charm and high social intelligence, but Byrne has a certain intrigue that comes from being out of step with normal socialness. On stage, he's not afraid to be a little, or completely, unconventional. When watching the concert film Stop Making Sense, one can observe Byrne being fully immersed in the music. At one point, he even ends up shuddering on the ground before running around the stage. His high energy comes from his unique connection to the melody. Byrne responds to music in idiosyncratic ways, which gives him a certain allure. France said that in the early days, when Byrne was on stage, he appeared to be a nervous wreck. It attracted people the same way, you know, a train wreck does. Now older, Byrne doesn't stumble around stage as much, though his performances, like American Utopia, can still be described as avant-garde. But whether he was dancing with a lamp or wearing an oversized suit, Byrne challenged the sensible with the unsensible. In some sense, he was ahead of his time. Gen Z loves absurdist humour. As for the big suit, I think Byrne is trying to turn himself into a caricature by exaggerating his clothing style for a humorous effect. He's conveying how absurd his personality is, but that's only my interpretation. For Byrne, the stage was a place where he could truly communicate with people. When you have trouble expressing yourself socially, through the normal channels, conversation, that's one of them, you find other ways to do that, and one way is to get up on a stage. Byrne's relationship with his fellow Talking Heads members turned somewhat bitter. Chris France wrote that Byrne became cold and dyspeptic as Talking Heads gained more success, though in 2018, Byrne reflected, "I can imagine I must at times have been a real pain in the ass to deal with." He has said in interviews that he probably has Asperger's syndrome, especially prevalent in his earlier years, and so he found socialization a little more difficult. But as evident from American Utopia, he has come to understand the connectedness of people. Maybe those millions of connections in our brains that got pruned and eliminated when we were babies somehow get kind of re-established, only now, instead of being in our heads, they're between us and other people. He began as the eccentric frontman of Talking Heads, who sang about buildings and food while encouraging people to stop making sense. Now, he advocates cheerfulness and optimism, and has come to a greater understanding of people. Who we are extends beyond ourselves, to the connections between all of us. Thank you! Does anybody have any questions?